Hey everyone, this is Cassie Green, Content Director of Apparelist and Editor at Printing United Alliance.
And this is Christine Shreve, founder of the Women in Garment Decoration Facebook group.
And you're listening to Threads of Change, a new kind of discussion for the printing industry.
It's time to talk about how we can inspire change. Our conversations will feature topics such as how we can build a more diverse environment at trade shows, what resources are needed to support underrepresented communities, and more.
We might be tackling some tough topics, but we're hoping you'll join us on this journey to be the change we want to see in the industry.
Come along with us. The next episode starts right now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Threads of Change. I got to say, we are really excited for this one because Cassie and I have wanted to have this discussion practically since the conception of the podcast happened, basically. So we are here with Kevin DeBruyn. I probably said that wrong. Correct me if I did. It's DeBruyn, right?
Brian, correct. Yeah.
Kevin DeBruyn, he is from Adaptive Consulting and Case Management. Side note, that is the practice where my therapist works, but Kevin is not my therapist, so there will be no Christine secrets tonight, in case you were wondering. But Kevin is a therapist. He is you're also a small business owner because you own the practice.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Okay. So what we're going to talk about is the perfect subject for Kevin because we're going to talk about small business owners and anxiety, which, like I said, is a topic we've wanted to talk about forever. So I want to start with the first question, which is, why is anxiety so prevalent in the entrepreneurial community? And is anxiety in and of itself a bad thing, Kevin?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't view anxiety as generally a bad thing. It's knowing how to interpret that anxiety, those feelings, and getting them early, I think, is a big part of that too.
Okay.
So anxiety is like, I think of it as our body's warning system. And so, right, it makes a lot of sense when you think about entrepreneurs. They have to keep an eye on all of the things, right? They're heading into an unknown landscape, and they've got to be aware of, like, what are all the possible things that could happen. And right, a big part of that is evaluating risk. And that's a lot of what anxiety helps us when it's working properly to do, is like evaluate risk. And so if you can kind of harness that, it can work really well.
Okay, I want to spotlight one thing you said there because, see, we're going off path a little bit, but when it's working properly.
Yeah.
So as someone who has dealt with some anxiety myself in the past, define for me working properly.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a hard thing to tell sometimes.
Right. No, that's absolutely. And I think, right, when it's working properly, we're using it to alert us to risk that's out there. And helping us kind of develop, like, put a plan into action. Right.
Okay.
So the key with it, of course, is to get it early, like I said. So when we start, right, it's some of those, like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? When we're kind of evaluating the landscape and we're thinking about these things, right, before it gets to that point. Most people notice it when it gets to that point of, right, and
Okay.
usually by that point it's too late. Because your body's taken over. Your body's got, like, this secondary system, right? The autonomic nervous system, which pushes us into fight or flight. And once you hit that, you're just along for the ride. Your body's got a process, right? It just dumps all the adrenaline and all the cortisol and everything like that into your system. And it's just got to cycle through. So the key is, finding out for yourself, like, okay, how do I know when I'm just starting to think about some of these things, when they're just entering my conscious mind, right? What are those things? Because a lot of times, like I think entrepreneurs especially, right? We're thinking about a lot of things. You got to run the whole show, right?
Yeah.
So, it's everything. You can't leave any kind of stone unturned when it comes to thinking about stuff. So we get so used to our brain just going and going and going and going and going, right? Thinking about all these things that we miss when we start to perseverate or really get stuck on something.
Okay, that totally makes sense to me. So it's basically catching it early and being aware enough of what's happening in your body and your mind that you don't let it get out of control.
Yep, absolutely. And
Okay.
that right, that word that you use there, being aware enough. That's kind of one of those things that I try and narrow in with people on, right? It's building an awareness.
Okay.
And
Yep.
so one of the tools that's really good for that, is mindfulness. So like a mindfulness practice. Um, so, but mindfulness is tricky because there's a lot of different flavors of mindfulness out there. And so, you know,
I do
it,
know.
I do.
I,
And that's interesting you say that, because when I talk with some of my teammates and some of the small business owners that work within the apparel decorated community, the community where Christine and I operate, so many people are like, "Oh, well, I tried to meditate and it didn't work, and that's why I still have anxiety." And so I think that's a really important point that you just made, is it comes in all flavors. What
yeah,
works for
yeah.
one is not going to work for the other.
Right, right, absolutely. And, I think what people run into is they're like, "Oh, I did it once and it didn't work." Or even, they give it like, "Oh, I practiced for weeks and it didn't do it." And really, like, I view mindfulness as, so I grew up in mindfulness in DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. And so Marshall Linehan developed that, and it's a like the most concrete explanation of mindfulness that I've come across. So there's two sides of it. There's what you do and there's how you do it. And what
I
you
like
do
that.
is observe, describe, and participate, right? So you observe what's going on, both like internally and externally. You describe it. So you put that experience into words, right? Which is super important. That piece of it. It's all important, but right, for different reasons. But the description one I really like, right? And then you participate in that moment, like whatever's going on. And then there's the how side, which is non-judgmentally, effectively, and one mindfully,
Mm.
right?
I love that. Non-judgmentally. I'm not so good at that one yet, but I'm working on it. But what I love about that is and I want to just kind of highlight that point you made, that there are a lot of different ways that a person can be mindful. So if meditating doesn't work for you, maybe something else will, So don't just think if one thing doesn't work that that's it.
Right, absolutely. And really, meditating has a lot of things, a lot of benefits to it. But to get back to right, that it's that idea of awareness, of building that
Mhm.
awareness that I think, especially with anxiety, is especially effective,
Yeah.
right?
And
I
and
love
I
that.
I think that's also an important point for this question that comes to mind, is the awareness. But I know I myself personally a lot of times will skip that stage, as you just described earlier. Many of us do skip that stage, right? So I mean, in your opinion or observation, especially for small business owners, entrepreneurs, why do you think anxiety kind of pushes us past, like almost bypasses awareness? Like what is that process? Are we just so moving so fast?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, and anxiety as well is very somatically interconnected, right? So our brain's interpreting um, all these all this information from our body, but it's a two-way street. So our body gives our brain information, and our brain like kicks back information back to our body. So if we're just moving, both sometimes in both realms, both physically and mentally, right? Because we're thinking about things and we're doing things at the same time.
Right.
And so it just builds. And that's where, if we're not careful, right, we lose an awareness of that. And so, I remember for myself, so like you get into this like productivity zone too, right?
Mhm.
Where you're just like checking things off the list and it feels good. But if I'm not careful, like I can go through the morning with that and it can just feel like a freight train that's slowly building up speed. And then by the afternoon, like my mind's just racing. And the train is got its own momentum.
Mhm.
And, pulling it back in is not easy at that point.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here going, "Yup, yup,"
Yeah.
and I understand that
Yeah.
nobody can hear me nodding, but I'm totally doing it.
Yes. All I'm thinking about is myself at 2 a.m. when the
Yeah, when
mind is
you're
up.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, and I'm sure I have a lot of entrepreneur friends who are going, "Yup, this is
Yeah.
completely it." But I wanna ask you, you mentioned something when we were talking about having you on the show, which was the reactive and the proactive mindset. And I'm
Yeah.
guessing if you're dealing with a lot of anxiety, you're reactive a lot.
Yeah. Um,
Or no?
yeah, I don't know if I would say that. I would, but I would definitely say, like for entrepreneurs and small business owners, like it's so easy to fall. We have to be reactive, right? So it's
Right.
not that reactivity is bad because we have to be able to react to changing environments.
Sure.
But that mindset in being reactive, right, is very different. It takes a whole different I wouldn't be surprised to find out like it takes a whole different area of your brain,
Mhm.
because that's how different it can feel. And I know for me personally, like it it takes a minute. I've got a it feels like literally switching gears to me.
Mhm.
Um, But we get into that reactive mindset because, like, we've got people coming in asking us questions. What do I do about this? Hey, what about this? Hey, you know, don't forget that constantly. And that is
Mhm.
right. We're dealing with changing situations, changing scenarios, changing timelines. And so we have to be able to react to that. But that's very different than sitting there and looking out and saying, okay, now how do I plan for this? How do I be proactive in terms of what's coming at me?
Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm like hearing this correctly. It sounds like maybe a balance almost of, because like you said, sometimes like I even tend to view that reactive as a negative, but that's not always the case. So
Right,
maybe
right.
finding that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep,
Okay.
yep. And I think it gets easier to stay in kind of that reactive mindset too, because because I don't have to worry about direction. I just have to respond.
Mm. Hmm.
Right. So there's no decision, like there's decisions to be made,
Yeah.
but it's very different than saying, all right, now where do I want to go? Right? Or how do I want to where do I want to be in a couple of years? Right? That takes just a different approach. Um, so I first ran into this um, actually when I was doing case management, and this was downstate, and so it was case management with the severely persistently mentally ill population, and a lot of reactivity because people are always in crisis, and so they're calling up, and you've got to sort through problems and help them problem solve and things like that. And I hit this uh, strange space where nothing was going on, and I felt so like just like a fish out of water. I'm like,
Mhm.
what is happening? Like this should be good, but I don't know what to do with myself. Like nobody's calling. There's nothing on fire, but but I didn't know what to do. Right. And so that idea, I had to sit with that for a little bit before I was like, okay, what could I do? Right? What are my options? What are the possibilities? Which are totally different questions than, if somebody's coming in and presenting you with a problem, like that's easy. But if I've got to look at what are the possibilities, what are the opportunities, that's a very different thought process.
Yeah. Wow.
And so one, to recognize that, okay, these are different parts of my brain. And so, and two, I think, is to give yourself time to switch. Like, if you've been reactive all day, don't think you can go home and at the end of the day and be like, okay, now I've got to dream about the opportunities and possibilities. Like, you've got to have time for your brain to calm down and switch gears to look at these other things.
Sure.
Every time we do one of these, there's a point in the talk where both Cassie and I go, "That was such a nugget of wisdom." That right there,
Yeah.
worth the price of admission.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it all kinds of ties into what we were saying is we are all moving so fast and things are coming at us from every direction, especially if you're a small business owner. They are coming at you from internal, external, and it's everybody coming to you.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to say, I just expect everything to happen like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
Well,
that's
and the
hard.
point that Kevin made too about it's easy to kind of get stuck in reactive because you don't have to make the decisions. And sometimes making the decisions is really hard.
Yes.
Deciding where you want to go,
Mhm.
especially if you're you're having a little imposter syndrome or you're feeling a little unsure about something. It's like, oh, I'll just stay over here and reactive and just solve problems.
Right. Yeah, because solving problems feels really good too.
Yes.
And like sitting in that unknown can be really
It's
uncomfortable.
hard.
Women in Print Alliance is dedicated to connecting, empowering, and advancing women in the print industry. As part of Printing United Alliance, we're fostering a more inclusive future through advocacy, education, and networking opportunities that connect women across the entire industry. Join us as an individual to grow your career, expand your network, and access exclusive resources, or enroll your entire organization to show your commitment to supporting women in print. Become a member today at womeninprintalliance.org and help us shape the future of print.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, Kevin. This question has been ever since we conceptualized this episode, and Christine put this question on there. It's been ruminating in my mind because the Printing United Alliance, which is my parent company, just put out an article recently, or is about to put out an article recently, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, about burnout, which is actually perfectly timed with this conversation we're having. So I, in the spirit of kind of trying to build that awareness, giving yourself time, how do you sort of recognize that you're reaching that precipice of burnout or of when anxiety is turning into a detriment to you? I mean, can you just provide our listeners with some general tips or thought processes, things that they can recognize?
Yeah, to go back to kind of that reactive mindset, I think, right. I think it's when responding to all those things starts feeling like death by 1,000 cuts. I think that's one of those kind of warning signs where it becomes just oppressive. You're like, I just need space to breathe for a minute. That's one of those that I know I've run into as well. And ironically, right, part of that is not having that time to engage in some of that proactive parts of us, because I think entrepreneurs, I don't want to speak too broadly, but have to have some dream, some vision of this opportunity that's out there, because that's what gets us up and gets us going, right? We see this thing out there, but we get pulled away from that in the process of doing. And so we got to get reconnected with, what am I doing this for? Right? Or or what's the opportunity that can come out of this? How do we get our head above water long enough to connect back with that stuff?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mhm. Well, I know that when you said death by 1,000 cuts, yeah, I think I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I know for me personally, when I can't like even return a simple message, like a phone call, a text message, an email, I can't bring myself to do it. That's when I'm like, whoa,
Hmm.
we are too far gone here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think that's a good question that I want to ask you too, because I know for me, sometimes I go, "Oh, I'm getting burned out. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to deal with this right now." So how do you, I mean, I know it will be different for every person, but are there some warning signs or some signals that maybe, like you said, death by 1,000 cuts, but are there things you should maybe watch out for that maybe you're going too far towards burnout? Or is that too general a question?
Yeah, I think, I think probably, right, it probably it starts with kind of that feeling, this oppressive feeling, or that, right, I can't get away, um, that death by 1,000 cuts, like, I keep coming back, that it's not that any one thing is taking me down, it's the volume of things, um,
Mhm.
and so I think we all have days like that. And I think it's when those days start spreading into weeks,
Mhm.
that's when it starts to get, uh, all right, we got to take a look at this a little more closely. I've got to start doing something different, and whether that's like engaging with the team differently, um, acknowledging to my team like, hey, I need some help with this, which right is really hard for us
Mhm.
entrepreneurial types.
Yeah.
We're used to carrying the weight, and so right to have like and hopefully if you're fortunate enough to have some people who can help you shoulder that, let them. Right, that's a big part of it. And if it's going on for a couple weeks too, that's when it's time to, maybe look at, all right, who can I talk to that's going to help me get some perspective on what's going on here,
Mhm.
help me pull back a little bit from being in the midst of it, and reevaluate kind of how I'm approaching these things.
Mhm.
Well, and I also think too, I want to just touch on this because I think it's an important thing. We tend to a little bit kind of, I don't know if this is the right word, but I'm going to use it. We tend to kind of glorify, like, I'm so stressed. I'm so busy. I'm so, bleh, and I have all this stuff to do and everybody needs me. And I think we need, is that like a mindset change that we need to cut, that it, I, I mean, from a therapeutic perspective, obviously that's probably not good.
Right, right, right. Well, and I think it's a cultural, right? I mean, I think
Mhm.
that's part of just the American ethos sometimes is that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess where I'm going with that a little bit is when you get in that mindset, is that the time that you need to maybe go talk to somebody or find a friend that can help you or, someone who's going to be like, or I guess my therapeutic knowledge is coming out a little bit and I'm going, is that more a sign like you're using that to maybe deal with something else that's going on in your life? Like, I'm so busy,
Mhm,
I'm so important, whatever it is.
mhm.
So there's your therapeutic question for I mean, I guess where I'm going is being busy is good, not and glorifying it is not, but if you're
Right.
buying into that too much and you're maybe using that to mask other areas of your life that aren't working, is that the time to go, maybe I need to get some help with this?
Yeah, yeah. So, right, I think there can come this point where we over-identify with being
Yes.
busy, with busyness. Right, I have to be the one that shoulders all of these things, uh,
Mm,
and I can't let go, right? That is definitely one of those times where it's like, okay, right, that's when I need to right, precisely the time that we feel least like doing it is probably right, probably the time where we need to start looking at that a little more closely.
Mhm.
And so one thing, it can be really tough. And so when I've met with people who are kind of in that spot too, I present them with a scenario of like, hey, you are going so hard and so fast, like you're concerned about your health. So if you did end up in the hospital, right, like something would have to change. You would have to drop something. What would it be? And so to kind of identify, like walk them, and sometimes you gotta like really like, okay, nope, like what's that look like? And what are the things that you've got to let go? Right? And how do you let go of them now before you end up in the emergency room with chest pain, right?
Yeah.
To be proactive about, all right, what am I gonna let go here? Because once you're in the hospital, something goes, right? You can't take care of it all from the hospital bed.
Mhm.
oh,
So
you can try. I speak from experience about
Yeah.
that. Doesn't work.
we've already talked about this, Christine. That was not good.
Well, yeah, I was younger then and stupider.
No, I'm just thinking if I, you were, Kevin, talking to a small business owner in the, decorated apparel industry, you could really only say one thing to the person about this. Like, I love that question. What would happen if you landed in a hospital bed?
Yeah.
Do you want to get to that point even? And I think that's a really important mindset shift to take internally.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Definitely.
yeah. Now, that also leads me to, you had mentioned working with your team, because obviously all of these small business owners, a lot of them do have a small team, whether that's their family, whether that's their employees, whatever. And that any sort of exponential growth of anxiety will absolutely impact your team. So,
Mhm.
I'm curious to hear, how do you, or how can a business owner, handle this quote unquote contagion of anxiety when it starts to negatively impact your team?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think, right, going back to that idea of awareness. So I kind of how I view things is like awareness is key. So much happens like even internally below the surface. Like we're aware of some of the things we do, and some of the things, right, are invisible even to us. That idea of like over identifying with busyness.
Mhm.
We're not that's not always on a conscious level. So so if we can build an awareness of kind of what's going on internally and within our teams, right, it allows us this opportunity to pull up what's otherwise going unnoticed, maybe growing on a small scale, right, and low term anxiety, um, and start to address it before it gets big and out of control. And I think, right, so what does that look like? Right, noticing, knowing who are the people on the team who are right most prone to kind of worrying about these things, and they are also probably going to be right valuable to the team because they're going to help identify whatever it is that might go wrong before it goes wrong.
Uh-huh.
And so how do we use them kind of in that way, but also not like saddle them with the weight of that. All right, it's all on you. You got to let us know before things.
You're the
Uh,
canary in the coal mine.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, but instead, right, using like, okay, what are the things that are concerning you? What do you have your eyes on? And use that to put a plan into action. Because when anxiety is working for us, like that's what we can use it to do. We recognize early. We say, okay. So I think of it as, and this sounds strange, but this has been really helpful to me, is when I catch myself, I try and take whatever it is that I'm perseverating on and turn it into a descriptive statement. Right. So in my head, it's like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? Right. And I try and take that and say, okay, what am I doing here? Right. I'm worried about X. Okay. That, right. Then I can turn that into my problem statement. If I'm worried about X, what can I do about this? Is this actually something I need to worry about? Or is this, right? Is this something my brain cooked up because it's bored and it needs a problem to solve? Because our brains will literally do that.
Oh man, like some of our other episodes, I'm about to, after this episode ends, go like write my descriptive statements. Like, I know everybody else listening, they're listening for this, but I'm going to go do it too.
Well, I think one of the questions I wanted to ask to kind of wrap things up, and I'm being my own timekeeper this time. So I was going to ask you for, like what kind of tools, but I think as we've gone through the episode, you've given us, be aware, do your problem statements, look at, what would you have to give up if you worked yourself to illness or, burnout or whatever it is. I think those right there are all amazing tools.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Cass, what do you think? What else do we
So
want to cover?
I got two other things that I want to get in.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And so the first is like, so all of those things are great, right? And all of those tools are wonderful. And some people can get those and run with them.
Right.
And sometimes I would say, right, if what therapy helps us to do is, okay, how do I do that? Right. And we run into problems with, okay, how do I build awareness? How I can't seem to catch this early. I don't know what my own early warning signs are for when I'm getting too wound up. Right. That's when we need that kind of independent observer to come in and help us identify that more specifically.
I love that.
So the other thing too that I want to say goes back to, right, identifying some of those problem statements and some of those risks. And the difficulty with anxiety too, and this is an important part of this, is our brains are skewed kind of negative. And so part of anxiety is like, it's right, we got to warn ourselves when trouble's coming. But we don't have to warn ourselves when good things are coming, right? There's no system for that, because like it's going to be fine. So when I started, I was probably about a year or 18 months into it, and I found myself at my office like thinking, oh man, what if this doesn't work out? Like, what if I don't get enough referrals? And kind of going through all of those things, and I caught myself in this, and I'm like, wait, what am I doing? Is this really right? And it was that question of like, is this something I need to look at? I'm like, a year from now, do I really think this will be my problem? And I'm like, no, I don't think that it will. And in fact, if I think about it, like if I look at the trajectory I've been on, a year from now, I'm like, reality wise, I think I'm going to have the opposite problem, where I'm going to have too many things, too many referrals, and I won't know what to do with them. And so I need to actually start hiring people. Like that needs to be my next step. Right. And so if I didn't take that kind of opposite scenario in terms of like, all right, my brain's kind of alerting me to what if bad things happen? All right, what if good things happen? And sometimes too, like if we go to the same extreme that we try to with the negative, right? Like, oh, what if, and I lose my house and all this stuff. And then we're like, all right, what's the opposite positive of that? And we're like, oh, we're so rich, we have 5 houses. And we're like, oh, that's ridiculous. We're like, yeah, but that's how deep into the negative we can get ourselves if we're not careful about that.
Ooh. What
I
a
love that. 5
powerful
houses.
retreat.
Right, right.
That's a stress on a whole other level I never want to touch.
Oh,
But
good God. Yeah, 1 house is more than enough for me. But I think that's a
Yeah.
really I love that to end on.
I do
That,
too. Wow.
you know, all as far as your negative mind can take you, take it the other way. And then you start realizing how maybe unfounded the negative stuff is.
Right,
Mhm,
right.
mhm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. I think coming away from this, hopefully everybody who's listening as we wrap up this episode, take a good hard look at your own mindset and
Yes.
really start asking yourself those questions. I think that's wonderful. Kevin, again, thank you for joining us. Any connect information you want to share with our listeners? Can they find you on LinkedIn? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, yep. I'm on LinkedIn, Kevin DeBruyn, adaptive counseling and case management. Therapy North also is another one. And you can find adaptivecounseling.com, therapynorth.org, both of those.
This was so amazing. Thank you so much. This was better than I was hoping.
Oh, good, good. Yeah. I love talking about this stuff. So absolutely. Yeah, anytime. I'm glad to
Well, don't
engage.
say any time because we might yeah.
Well, thanks again, Kevin. Thanks, Christine. I'm really excited that this is our first episode of 2026.
Yes.
It's a good
A
one.
great
Let's
note
go.
to start
Let's
on.
get 'em. Excellent. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Cassie Green, Content Director of Apparelist and Editor at Printing United Alliance.
And this is Christine Shreve, founder of the Women in Garment Decoration Facebook group.
And you're listening to Threads of Change, a new kind of discussion for the printing industry.
It's time to talk about how we can inspire change. Our conversations will feature topics such as how we can build a more diverse environment at trade shows, what resources are needed to support underrepresented communities, and more.
We might be tackling some tough topics, but we're hoping you'll join us on this journey to be the change we want to see in the industry.